Caught you. No. Yeah, I've been here for times actually. I was here last week as well, but I filled in Easter.
Oh, okay. And do you have a last name you want to use or just?
Oh, I'm Geyer.
Geyer? I just thought in case people wonder who this great person is, I just can't believe it.
I'm surprised he did today, but
I
apparently
know. Huh?
he said his email wasn't.
Right, yeah, I know there was that whole thing. Okay, Brent Geyer, it's in G-U-Y-U.
Not like that. Like Meyer.
Right. You don't have a U in it? Like G-Y-E-Y-E, Geyer. Okay. Do you know James Geyer?
I know very few Geyers. There aren't a lot of us.
He's a big dancer.
Oh, okay.
Well, he's tall and he's a dancer.
Is he from like here?
Around this area. I'm waiting for Joel to give me his brother. You can start the gathering music. I don't know where Joel is.
Good morning. I am Joel Miller. I am the interim minister here at the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm so very pleased to welcome you here this morning. This is a congregation that seeks to welcome everybody possible. We welcome you whether you walk in or perhaps you come in with the help of a cane or you wheel in or maybe even somebody carried you in. We welcome you whether you are married or you are single or you have a large family or you're far away from the people you love. We welcome you regardless of what you believe. We just ask that you come peacefully with love in your heart and with a commitment to connecting with us and making the world a better place, however that is right for you, as you are with us. Welcome to the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship, in person and online. Good morning. And now we have announcements.
Good morning. I'm Kathy Cacavelli, your Sunday service associate. I may sound like I'm sick, but I tested this morning and I don't have COVID, just so you know. Anyway, a few select announcements. This afternoon at 3 p.m., there will be a fundraiser to benefit the New Jersey Abortion Access Fund. featuring a play from Uterus, Stories from You to Us, in the meeting room here, and you can register on Realm, and we ask for a $25 donation. The Morris Area MLK Day 2023 event is on Monday, January 16th, tomorrow. For more information or to purchase tickets, you can find a link in your order of service. On Sunday, January 29th at 1 p.m., join other folks from our fellowship for a conversation about sexual orientation, pronouns, and the changing view of gender identity. Contact Reverend Joel Miller or our DRE, Nick Walwork, if you have questions. On Saturday, February 4th, there will be a startup training for the fellowship given by the UUA Central East Regional Office. More information about the specifics will be coming out shortly. And there is a link in your order of service to an overview of the training course. Lunch Bunch gathers weekly after the 11 a.m. service at Nana's in Florham Park. Did you say the tours are in the... Oh, the other piece of paper. Are you curious to learn more about the fellowship? We will be holding in-person visitor tours on January 22nd after the 9:30 and 11 a.m. services. You can register by emailing your name and which tour time you would like to attend, sending the subject line Visitors Tour to welcome@muff.org. Thank you.
Having grown up a Unitarian Universalist in the 60s and 70s, the congregation I served was very interested in science, very interested in the religions of the world. So I learned about a lot of things, but I didn't learn a lot of the stories that a lot of my friends knew. I'd go to my school, my public school, and on the playground. Sometimes my friends would ask me if I knew some of the stories from the Bible, and I'd heard some of them. I'd heard the story about Adam and Eve and how, and sometimes I'd even hear about it like on television, and what Adam and Eve, they ate the apple and from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and somehow that was a bad thing. And then ever after that, they were bad. And it had something to do with their being naked and maybe about sex. I don't know, it never quite made sense to me. I loved my Unitarian Universalist church so much. It meant so much to me. And as I got older and became an adult, I realized when I was at work, I was thinking about church or fellowship. But when I was at fellowship, what then I called church, I really wasn't thinking about work very much. In fact, when I would think about work, I got to realizing, I would like this to be my work. So here I am. That was a long time ago now. I went to theological school, and I began reading all of the scriptures of world religions, but I really began reading the Bible, and I was so interested in it, I even studied some Hebrew, because I wanted to read, I like what they call the Old Testament or the Hebrew scriptures. I wanted to read it in the Hebrew. And I was surprised by a couple of things. One of the things is that when the book opens up, like in the first sentence, in English, we say, when God created the heavens and the earth. That's how it's translated. That's what it says in Hebrew. It says, when the gods created the heavens and the earth. I was like, wait a minute, that's plural. What's going on here? There's a whole story behind that. But the other thing was, I read the story of Adam and Eve. Now, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the story of Adam and Eve? Okay, most folks, yeah. So I read it, and at this point, I knew what other people said the story was, but when I read the story, this is what I got. So this is the way I understood it. I'm not telling you have to understand it this way, but, so Adam and Eve are in the garden. There's they can do anything they want in the garden, but they're not allowed to eat anything from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And one day, there's a serpent in the garden that says to Eve, you should have that apple because it's really tasty and you'll know stuff. And that's really cool. And Eve's like, Well, you sure? I thought we weren't supposed to. He said, it's worth it, said the snake. It'll be great. It'll be fine. She eats it. Wow. Oh, my goodness. She goes over to talk to Adam, and then the first thing she realizes is, oh, dude, you're naked. And he goes, what's that? Here, eat this. You'll get what's going on. He bites it. He's like, wow, the sky, it's beautiful, the trees. Eve, you're naked. So they make underwear. Put the underwear on. They want a little privacy, you know? So then in the story, finally God comes and God says, oh, underwear, you ate the apple, didn't you? And they're like, and Adam's embarrassed, and he says, well, Eve made me do it. So when I read the story, the sin, so to speak, the bad thing that happened wasn't that they were naked, wasn't that they had knowledge, it was that Adam lied. I've always thought that was the moral of that story, and what made things difficult after that was lying. We have a lot of friends and neighbors who would still say, no, it was that they're naked, and sex. Later in the service, I'm going to be talking about OWL, Our Whole Lives, and the fact that Unitarian Universalists, we teach sex education as a part of our curriculum for children, for teens, for young adults, for older adults. And I took it in 1972 when it was first coming out. It was a wonderful experience for which I'm very, very grateful. So we'll talk a little more about that in the service today. And if you're going to classes, you'll have an opportunity at some point to take OWL and understand some of the things I'll be talking about. I invite us all now, let's light our chalice and share in the words of affirmation. We have some chalice lighters this morning who are going to come up and help us with the chalice lighting. There you go. Yes. Yes, good. Thank you. Try again. You're doing fine. Let her do it. You do it. Here, we're going to let her try again. There we go. Thank you. Perfect. Love is the spirit of this fellowship, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now I'm going to, I'd like to sing this in a round. So we're going to sing it through a couple times just so that you get to know it, and then we'll split up on two sides, and this will be group one, and this will be group two. So Brent's going to help us out as we learn the hymn first. Number 396, I know this rose will open.
I know my fear will burn.
to try this, and we're going to do this a cappella, and I'm going to start on this side with you. I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will. I know this rose will. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will. This rose will. I know this rose will. My fear will. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. Did good. Thank you. I'd like to invite children or even youth, certainly the young at heart are all welcome to come and share with me in this time for all ages. You don't have to come up if you don't want. Please come up. Right here, you're right here on the chair. That works? I'm so glad to see you guys. Good morning. Gonna sit right there, okay? Oh, thank you. That makes me very happy. And it reminds me of when my children were about this age. How old are you, sweetie? How old are you? You're 3? 4. You're 4. My children are now 28 and 31, but they too big to sit on my lap anymore. But I did love to tell stories and have them sit on my lap when many years ago now.
But you can still tell them stories even though they can't sit on their lap.
They say I tell a lot of stories. My children do, yes. And I do like it. Not so much a story at this moment, but we use this word love. We're talking about many different kinds of love in the service today. A long, long time ago, people in a place called Greece studied love, thought about love, and they had 4 important words for love. We use love and we have so many meanings with it. But when the ancient Greeks talked about love, they talked about, the 4 kinds were, one was philios, which meant the love of brothers and sisters, of friends, really. Brotherly love, philios. And then they talked about the love that families have for one another, storge. So you love your parents and your aunts and uncles and grandparents, storge. And then there was a more complicated kind of love. It would be called agape. And that might be the kind of love you feel when you really get to know someone in the fellowship and you realize, wow, I really care about this person a lot. They're my friend, and yet, not the kind of friend you would have necessarily that's like a best friend, but an important friend, and you do some important things together. Yeah. And the last kind they had was called eros. And it was interesting because eros was the kind of love that people had when they loved a beautiful picture or loved an amazing sunset.
Like love an object?
Sometimes, but sometimes it was people too that would fall in love and maybe have a friend who was they fell in love with. And that's what sometimes eros also meant. And we're talking about these different kinds of love. And when you're in OWL, even though OWL talks about, started out as a way of having sexuality education at church, It's much bigger than that. Love is much bigger than that. That's why the ancient Greeks had 4 words for love, and in some languages there are 20 languages for love. The most important thing, we hope, is that you feel love for yourselves and can help others feel love for themselves. That's something that's so important for us as Unitarian Universalists. We want you to feel loved when you're here at the fellowship, and we hope you can take that sense of being loved and share it with others in the world. It's simple as that. We're going to invite you to go to your classes now, and we will sing to you as you head out. And somebody will need to take the RE chalice. Because of the kind of loves, the way we wish to practice love as Unitarian Universalists, we celebrate milestones and passages when we worship together at the fellowship. There are many milestones to mark this particular weekend, milestones of significant importance. The first one is for the day we celebrate the birth of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. And even though I don't speak of the topic of the service isn't specifically about Dr. King this morning, I will say that in a sense every Sunday Dr. King is on my mind, and you certainly will hear more specifically about Dr. King from me. There is, by the way, tomorrow an event celebrating Dr. King's birth and his work in the world, and you can look in the order of service for more information about that if you wish to participate. That piece of paper that I had last Sunday, I do not have this Sunday. Shari, you have a daughter who we want to mention in the milestones today.
Yes, my daughter, Sarah Bernadette Matsushima, who has grown up here, has a job full-time with benefits and working in the registrar's office at Emerson College in Boston. So that's the one news. And I have additional which is that she's not given up on her music. She's got an album release show for her latest EP on February 8th, which will be streaming online and also live in person if you happen to be in Boston.
That's fantastic. A job with benefits. Woot! That's always nice as a parent to hear that news. And a musician with a day job that then lets her be creative. That's always a good thing, isn't it, Brent?
With benefits.
With benefits, yeah. It was a moment of dichotomies, sitting with the children just now, being blessed by a child that wanted to sit on my lap close to me, and holding this candle at the same time. This somewhat delayed because I wished to speak with his family first, but this white candle, as we do whenever we mark the death of somebody in the life of this community, a candle that we light, we are finally now at the moment when we can light this candle for William George Hall. Bill, as we knew him, he died on December 6th. He was 96 years old. And I have heard from his family and from you, he was so very kind, solid, steady, principled, very smart, a twinkle in his eye. He and his wife, who died 11 years ago, were very active in the life of this congregation. And they joined quickly when they found out this congregation had been formed. The fellowship was meeting at the YMCA, and Bill's wife, Sylvia, and a friend of theirs, Charlene Catula, made the purchase of the mansion possible. Rumor has it, because I've not confirmed it, that they actually went out and bought it so they could just have it, and the congregation could have the choice of whether to buy it itself or not. A memorial service for Bill will be planned later in February or March. And we light this candle for him and for the kind of love in this fellowship, the kind of love that carries on, lives on in community from our lives, even after we've died. Spirit of life, higher power, presence that's maybe just community, maybe more than the words we speak could ever describe. This privilege I have of looking out and seeing you, that presence, this community that has, at this moment, the name of the Morristown Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I have the privilege of learning about your many loves, your many journeys, your challenges. And in this moment of meditation, in the quietness of this meeting hall, to which we bring ourselves in ritual celebration every week, and perhaps to which we bring ourselves throughout the week in spirit when we need it, when others need us. In this moment, let all the ways that we love become visible for a moment in our minds. Reminding us of the love that has been, and perhaps encouraging us to share the kinds of love this world needs. Perhaps loves that are unexpected, beyond explanation, but oh so needed. And let our children and our youth see how we live friendship, how we live love for life, how we live longings and desire and pleasure, and how we live the idea of family, both for ourselves but for everyone in this world, that everyone is beloved in a family in some way or another. And in this moment, as I stand here and look upon this loving community, let let us also remember with gratitude our lives, our connections, our loves. And may I express the gratitude I know for this community and for the love that it expresses within and beyond its walls. Amen. So be it. Blessed be.
Now is the time for our offering, which today will be split 50-50 between our fellowship and the Faithify campaign to raise funds for the rehabilitation and improvement of UU churches in remote villages, churches that can be used as evacuation shelters and community centers. The money raised will go to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines. And as always, you can give via text or online, particularly if you're watching our live stream. And as you give generously, please enjoy our offertory music, Beautiful, performed by today's pianist Brent Geyer.
I love the many ways in which we learn about and encourage learning about love with our Whole Lives curriculum. We call it OWL for short, O-W-L, Our Whole Lives. The name, by the way, we got the name for OWL before J.K. Rowling wrote the Harry Potter books, just saying. Although I kind of like that, there is that kind of interesting overlap in acronyms. Some years ago now, I was serving another congregation, and the DRE and I wanted to promote OWL in the congregation. We were perhaps still a little naive about the binary issues around gender at that point. But we were naive about some other things too, as it turned out. We decided in the promotional materials for the OWL classes we were teaching, there was going to be OWL for youth, for the middle school aged youth, for whom that's a very important time to get information just about what's happening, but also about how to continue relating with people. There were classes for young adults. There were classes for older adults, as well as for children, all about what does it mean to be a person who has a body, when we all have bodies as living human beings, and how is the wholeness of our lives expressed in the fullness of who we are? That's really the question of OWL. But it does it includes a significant component about sex. And it tends to draw an initial audience, so to speak. So we decided that for these promotional materials that we would have a clothesline, and on it would be a pair of boxer briefs and a pair of panties. Our whole lives, we were thinking, that'll catch somebody's eye. There's underwear, and there's all kinds of gets people thinking about bodies. The Sunday morning after we had put it in the announcements and there were some posters on the wall, in the coffee hour, I was standing and I had a group of people come up to me. They had something to say about those announcements and the clothesline with the underwear on it. And the first person to talk to me was one of our beloved elders. And she said, I'm just really upset that you would use that logo of all logos. I mean, all of this focus in OWL is not just about the pelvic body area, Joel. We should be focusing on other areas. We shouldn't be doing that in the congregation. And then a younger member of the congregation, somebody in their probably late 40s, said to me, actually, Joel, I've got to tell you, I really dislike the way you sort of did this heteronormative thing with male underwear and female underwear. Why not male or female, and really, we could have been a little more inviting than that. But then, and it happened just about in this fast, there was a woman, I think she was in her early 30s, and she said, I hate it because the panties get me to thinking about how you can only be sexy if you're thin. The youth group happened to be standing not too far away, and they had gotten very interested in this exchange and had apparently been listening behind me. I hadn't seen them. And they kind of walked up to us, and they kind of looked at us, and they'd had OWL. These were the seniors, so they'd had the OWL for middle schoolers and the OWL for older teens. And one of them said, we were just talking because we couldn't help but overhear you, and we're really surprised because why are you assuming that somebody who identifies as male is wearing the boxers and somebody who identifies as female is wearing the panties? And the adults could not say anything to that. They had to think about that. I encouraged them to take an OWL class. Audre Lorde, the late African-American lesbian feminist poet, a scholar, a mother of 2 children, an activist, a survivor of cancer. She wrote about the erotic. I think she wrote about the erotic in the most healthy and amazing way because it was, yes, the erotic includes sex, but it's about so much more than just sex. She wrote specifically for me, we have been raised to fear the yes within ourselves, to fear our deepest cravings. We have come to distrust that power which rises from our deepest and non-rational knowledge. There are many kinds of power, used and unused, acknowledged or otherwise. The erotic is a resource within each of us that lies in a deeply spiritual plane, firmly rooted in the power of our unexpressed and unrecognized feelings. It comes from the Greek word eros, the personification of love in all its aspects, and personifying creative power and harmony. So when I speak of the erotic, writes Audre Lorde, I speak of it as an assertion of the life force of creative energy empowered. That made sense to me when I read that about 35 years ago, having been raised a Unitarian Universalist. And I took the predecessor curricula, we called it About Your Sexuality. It had somewhat more narrow focus. We recreated the curriculum and called it OWL because we understand, as Audre Lorde wrote, it's so much bigger than that, so much more than that. I will say, though, that in one of the very first classes ever to formally be taught sexuality education in one of our congregations, the two teachers, a man, in this case a man and a woman, they weren't related, which is important, they shouldn't be when they're teaching a class. They warned us, the first thing they warned us about, they said, so, we'll be here, your parents are in the sanctuary, if you ever have questions, that's fine. If you need to leave for a bit, that's fine. We just want you to feel comfortable and to learn about what all this is about. And in those days, information was very hard to get. And then they said, right before we really started the class, we also want you to know that if the police come, they will be arresting us. You'll be fine. They might take us away. Your parents will come and get you. You'll be fine. You've done nothing wrong. We've done nothing wrong, but it's a possibility. Turns out that there were a couple of AYS teachers, a couple of our teachers, who were in fact arrested. It was in Minnesota. An overeager district attorney decided to see if he could score political points. Christian theologians often write about those ancient Greek philosophers and their ideas of love. As I mentioned to the kids, eros, philios, brotherly love, like city of Philadelphia, city of brotherly love, agape, storge. But they rank them in order of value. And eros is lowest on the ranking because it contains sex. But the word erotic, even for the ancient Greeks, had many meanings. It was seen as a fundamental creative impulse by Plato, an ancient Greek philosopher. And others have defined it as the sum of life-preserving instincts manifested as impulses to gratify basic needs, or perhaps sublimated impulses to protect and preserve the body and the mind, and to procreate. And that's a whole lot more than just sex. But I would hasten to add, as a Unitarian Universalist, it does include sex, and that's good. And that doesn't make it less valuable than agape or philios or storge. So just a few days ago, I got a letter from the Unitarian Universalist Faith Action New Jersey organization. It's an advocacy organization put together by our Unitarian Universalist congregations here in New Jersey. In fact, the letter was co-signed by Jamie Thal, a member of this congregation, and it went to all the ministers and leaders of our congregations. And in it, she explained that New Jersey recently adopted new standards for sexuality education. And they're worried because some right-wing organizations have begun a campaign falsely claiming these standards are meant to groom and sexualize children and to promote gender confusion, which is not true. I looked the standards up. The standards are aimed to having high schoolers graduate knowing how individuals feel about themselves, how they feel about their identity and sexual orientation, and how that can be positively or negatively impacted by so many different things. The second one of 4, healthy individuals establish and maintain healthy relationships by utilizing positive communication and social skills. That there are many factors that influence how we feel about ourselves and the decisions we make. And 4, there are state and federal laws which provide access to sexual health care for minors as well as adults, and these laws protect minors from unhealthy sexual situations. Now, I happen to know that all of those standards are grounded in science, and they're grounded in the process of democracy so that people of any faith or no faith can feel that they can either make use of public sexuality education in schools, or they really don't want their kids to have that education, and they want to keep them in a sort of box somewhere. Their choice as a family, they can do that. I also want to point out that there's a very, very strong correlation between states with healthy and informative sexuality education practices and standards, like here in New Jersey, and low rates of unwanted pregnancies and lower rates of sexually transmitted infections. So to put it simply, when you have good standards and you implement them well, children, as they grow up and become young adults, they make much better choices. And they, as Unitarian Universalist, I can tell you our experiences, they have a lot better sex, too. And that's a good thing. There are states whose standards can be summed up as just say no. Abstinence only. Don't do it. They have sexually transmitted infection rates, and they have teen and pregnancy rates 6 times higher than states like New Jersey or New York or Massachusetts. 6 times. So the lying about New Jersey standards, this may be unfair of me to say, but it feels like the attempt is to terrorize us, to lie about what the standards do. And coming out of an impulse, I think, to have us feeling terror about our bodies and our identities and how we experience sexuality in all of our unique ways. Eros is a very powerful force. Sex is a powerful force for us. I love that in the southwestern United States, there are a number of different Indian nations, Native American cultures that tell stories about Coyote. Coyote's a mythic figure, kind of a trickster figure. And in all of these kinds of love that I mention, Eros is the one that can be most chaotic, let's say. Not that any of them can't be, but this is the story they tell. Coyote tends to be a lust-filled character. Not considered especially good or evil, it just is. He's kind of a force of nature. He's got a lot of hormones. One day, Coyote's at the edge of a river drinking water. He falls into the river because he's really not paying attention, which happens to Coyote a lot. Coyote comes up for air, and as he's catching his breath, he notices downstream 2 women are bathing. He sees them washing themselves. They're not dressed. He growls in pleasure. He wants to just float by and gaze in a most rude way. He knows he can't get away with it. The women are going to leave. So Coyote changes himself into a beautiful piece of driftwood. Driftwood Coyote floats downstream. One of the women picks up the pretty stick, wow, and hands it to the other woman, and they toss it. They hand it back and forth as they look at it, and one of the women says, "This is too good looking," and they throw it back into the water like, that might be dangerous. It was too late. They were both pregnant. The primordial creative power of the universe is kind of like this trickster god Coyote. Not considered good or bad inherently, but not inherently safe either. An elemental force, perhaps, that precedes religion and precedes our values. We humans with our spiritual awareness, how shall we think ahead? How shall we respond to our desire? Shall we be accountable? Shall we use our creative, our procreative powers, our powers for pleasure, for connection? How shall we use them? So teenage Unitarian Universalists I found when I have taught OWL, we'll often ask, so how do I know when I can start having sex with other people? How do I know when it's the right time? The short answer from here in the pulpit, I'll tell you, is that takes erotic wisdom. And erotic wisdom takes a lifetime to acquire. I know that it's a question that some teenagers are trying to answer, but I found that it's a question sometimes 40-year-olds are trying to answer, 60-year-olds are trying to answer, even 80-year-olds are trying to answer. So I explained to kids in an OWL class, it's good to have erotic wisdom and be able to find the answer for yourself in a way that's you're accountable to your own life and to the lives of others. Well, okay, Reverend Joel, so how do you know you have erotic wisdom? When does anybody have all the wisdom they need to know? Part of erotic wisdom is knowing that the erotic is not just about sex, but the way in which desire and creativity and justice and friendship, our commitments to others, our obligations to our communities, the possibilities of parenthood, all of that intertwined and interconnected. It's still not very helpful for a teenager asking this question. So I recommend 5 basic things any teenager, and in fact any adult, can do to really hone their practice of erotic wisdom. Number 1, just keep each other safe. So, use condoms if you're not in a long-term relationship, for example. Just keep each other's bodies and lives safe. Number 2, be honest. Don't be Adam in the Adam and Eve story. Don't tell the lies. Be honest. 3, be respectful. Or perhaps another way of saying that is, understand what it is to give consent and to ask for it. Ask if you want to do something. Ask if you want something. And a last point, I think one of the best pieces of advice I got was when I was a student minister in California many years ago. A fellow named Art M. said, Art was 84 at the time, he said, yeah, when it comes to sex, Joel, make good memories. That's how you know you're doing it right. In fact, he said to me once, well, the fellowship was helping Art out. He was getting to the point where he needed to be in assisted living. And so we were trying to find the right place for him. And Art's wife had died some years before, and he missed her terribly. But when he got into an assisted living center where he felt comfortable, he started dating. And he started having a lot of fun. And he said to me, you know what, Joel, I got to tell you something. I'm an 84-year-old humanist man, and I'm feeling puppy love. But the more I think about it, if anybody ever says teenagers feel puppy love and adults don't, that's an insult. Nuts on that. I have the same passions I was having as a teenager. He also admitted to making some of the same kinds of mistakes he made as a teenager and creating some drama in the assisted living center where he lived. Another aspect of erotic wisdom for a congregation as a whole, for us Unitarian Universalists, I think it's important to understand that the religious values we create together and the educational curricula that we create for one another and for our kids, we can't presume that we will be in control of anything, especially the erotic powers of the universe, because that's the mistake that Coyote is always making. There's no perfect book of rules that can tame the creative forces of the universe, which is why we believe there's no one true expression for sex and love, as well as spirituality and belief. All forms of our love, from our wisdom, must be grounded in a just and compassionate intention and accountability. We take responsibility for the consequences of our action. We ask for forgiveness when we've caused harm. We make amends whenever possible. And it's best not to be easily offended. As one Unitarian Universalist once said to me, my yuck is sometimes someone else's yum. So when I'm talking with teenagers, I'll say, so can you understand and accept the consequences of your actions? And they'll think about that. They think a lot harder about it these days, I've noticed, than in earlier generations. Perhaps because they see so much on the internet, so much more than I could ever possibly have seen when I was their age. So my advice typically around that, if you plan to become sexually active, I think you should be able to negotiate your parents' deep anxieties about your decision to do that. I said that in a sermon once, and a Unitarian Universalist mom came up to me after the service, and she said, I really like that guide. I feel respected that you said that. And there's a problem with it, because if that had been my guide, and I had tried to go to my Catholic mom with that, I still would never have had sex. So my advice to any of us, you parent or not, you can take OWL too. We'll be having OWL classes for all ages at some point in this year. These guides are really guides for all of us. Are you able to speak clearly with a partner about using safe sex practices? Can you simply tell each other what feels good and what feels bad? Can you interact with one another in a way that you won't hurt anyone? And for me, I always sum it up with Art's advice. Love should create a wonderful memory that you enjoy for the rest of your lives. May the wisdom we need as loving beings, the wisdom by which the choices we make create wonderful memories, memories that we cherish rather than memories we regret. And may all the forms of love be guided in the same sort of way, that the energy of our life moves into the world as blessings, as light, as a power that gives joy to all. I'd like to invite you to sing with me as we close the service. It's number 368. I put the words that are on the screen. That's for most folks to sing. But if you kind of like there's a part that goes with it, a second set of voices. So if you're a singer who would like to sing that second part, you'll want to open up the gray hymn book and turn to number 368. Why don't we play it through once just so that folks know what we'll be singing. I invite you to stand in body or spirit.
Oh
Go now in peace, deeply regard each other, truly listen to one another. Speak each of you what you must speak, but be ready in any moment to disarm your own heart, and be ready to always live as if the realm of love had begun. Go in peace, be in peace. We will gather again.